now that I've added a title and the main description of the poster to the page, we can see how it's starting to take shape to look like the diagram that I was given to match. Now I just need to add in each shape and its name, and then I also need to add the description of the symbolism associated with each shape underneath it. Then I want to arrange it on the page to look like this, to where we're going to have 3 rows of 4, or we'll have 4 columns, that have 3 in each one, depending on how you look at it. And we want to make sure that they're evenly distributed across the page and that they're all aligned neatly as well. Okay, so let's get started back here for this and take a look at our first shape and its description. Now again, I know a lot of times for students who are just starting in these softwares, when I see that the shape name is in its own text box and then the paragraph underneath with the description is in its own text box. But if you remember, we're supposed to have an even amount of space in between each one of these. And so each of these should be equal. And the easiest way to do that's going to be to keep them in the same text box together and use that same feature where we put space after in the paragraph. But we're going to add an additional feature to this that's called a style sheet, and that style sheet is going to help us make sure that those are consistent all the time. So what I'm going to do next, though, is put my cursor right in front of the next shape name, which is circle or oval. And then I'm going to hold down Shift and click at the end of that description to grab the symbolism paragraph as well. And then I'm going to Command X because that cuts it out, so I'm less likely to accidentally duplicate some content there. And for now, I'm just going to draw a text box on the page. Now I know I need to have 4 of these in the row, and I know that my page is 11 inches wide, right? So I could have not quite 3 inches of width for each one of them for that, right? So let's see. Let's go with maybe around what looks like about 1/4 of the page. If I come back to my properties panel and check this out, it's about 2.5 inches wide. One thing that I would recommend you do is try to keep all of these text boxes a consistent width and height, because what we're going to want to do to be able to evenly distribute these across the page is to treat the shape and its title and its description all as a single unit, almost like a playing card, if you will. And if this was the face of the card, that's going to make it a lot easier for us to make these evenly distributed. So I'm going to try to keep a consistent height and width of each of my text boxes here. And 2.5 inches sounds pretty good, probably for the width. And then for the height, I probably have a little bit more space for that. For now, I'm going to go with maybe about 3. And then I'll adjust that if I need to. Now you notice when I changed this text, it scaled up and it scaled up my width too. And that's because I wasn't paying attention and I had the proportions constrained to where this text box is going to keep the same aspect ratio as I resize it. What I want to do is unclick that, and now I can come back again and I can change my width back to 2.5 inches by about 3 inches. Notice it did stretch my text. So if that happens to you, what you can do is come back to your character menu, and you should be able to see that its height or vertical scale is 100%, and we can see that my horizontal scale got sized down to 53 and some change. So all I have to do to fix that is to change it back to 100. And now they're the same. They're too big, but they're the same. So for now, I'm going to move over and I'm going to paste my content in. And we can see a big difference there, right? There's a lot more room here now. So I'm going to triple click to select the title. And in terms of hierarchy, right now I'm just worried about size. I'm not worried about the typeface that I'm using. So what I want to do now is just size this to be a little bit smaller than this, but big enough to where you could see it from a distance. So I'm going to come to my character menu. Now, if you're working in the typography workspace, you should have that up top, or in the properties panel, even in the essential space. You can usually find anything, the things that you can do with whatever it is you've selected. So in this case, I should be able in my properties panel to scroll down and see my character menu as well. Or I can come up to the window and I can move down to my type menu, and that's where my character and paragraph panels are going to be, along with some others that we're going to use in this exercise. One way or another, I just want to make this text a little bigger. I think this was 18 point. I'm going to check real quick. Yeah. So I can come back again, triple click to select, and I don't want to quite go 18 point. Although it's small enough, I actually probably could. Yeah, that looks okay. So I'm going to stick with 18 point there. And then I just want this paragraph text to be a little bit bigger too than 12, because this is a poster, so I should be able to look at it and read it from a reasonable distance. I'm going to come to about 14 for that. And I want to increase the leading, the space in between them, just a little bit. So it's a little bit more generous. Right now it's 16.8, so I can come up to about 18 point. And that's pretty good. And then for both of these, they need to be centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything in here, right? So I can click and drag, but it'd be easier for me to put my cursor at the top, hold down Shift, and select and choose Paragraph Centered. Now the next thing I want to do is add a little bit of space between the name of the shape and the paragraph that describes it. And so what I'm going to do now is triple click to select my paragraph that has the name. And I'm going to make sure I get all of it, including this little hidden character that shows the end of the paragraph. And I can use my properties panel, I can use my paragraph shortcut up here, or I can go to my window, type, and open the full paragraph panel. Just depends on what makes the most sense to you. But once I find it, I need to come to my paragraph menu, and I need to get where I can see the space after paragraph option. And right now, since I'm kind of styling this as I go, I can, just click this until it looks pretty good. Around 8 point, it starts to get a little too far. I'm going to go around 6. So from our Design 1 training, our fundamentals, we know that proximity matters. So the however close this is to its descriptor lets people know that they belong together. So that's why I was saying it was starting to get a little too far. I actually even feel like 6 might be just a little too far. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to reduce that down to about 4. And that feels a little bit better. They still feel like they belong together, even though they are a little bit separate. There's a little bit of breathing room there, and all the text is centered. So what I want to do now is bring in probably the rest of my text, because that's going to make things just a little bit easier. So what I want to do first, though, is instead of trying to style these individually like I just did, I now have this piece of text as a baseline. So what I want to do is store all of these styles and settings that I put in here into a specific place that I can apply to all the other text that needs to look like this, and then I can control that from a single source. In Adobe products, especially Illustrator and InDesign, that's called style sheets. So what I want to do is create a couple of style sheets that contain all of this information that I just used to format this text. To get to that, I can come to my window menu, and if I come back down to my type menu here, I need to choose character styles and paragraph styles. Right now, all I actually need is paragraph styles, so I'm going to start there. To understand when to use which, paragraph styles need to govern the bulk of your text. So every single piece of text on this page should have a paragraph style applied to it. And then we use character styles to format the exceptions to the rules that are created with our paragraph styles. Hopefully that makes sense. But I'm going to show you how to create these. So what I could do is I could actually start with my text by creating paragraph styles. And when I create one, you notice if I open it up, I get all these settings for the text where I can choose the typeface, the size, all of that. And then I could apply it to the text on the page. But a lot of times for us as visual thinkers, it makes a lot more sense for us to first get some styles that we like and then create these style sheets. So the way that we can do that is by selecting the text that we want to create a style sheet from. In this case, I'm going to start right here. And I'm going to click this plus button. And with this text selected, when I create a paragraph style, when I open that style sheet up, it's already going to have the things that I've specified in there, including in indents and spacing, that space after. So now I just need to make sure that I name this in a way that not only I understand it, but that other people can understand what it is too. And I want to make sure that I'm using a nomenclature that's fairly brief, but that is also universally understood. And in this case, I'm going to use web nomenclature for this. So I so far have 2 headings on my page. And if this was a web page, this would be formatted as what's called an H1, the first heading on the page. After that, any subsections under that H1 would be formatted as H2s. So this is an H2. I'm going to name this paragraph style sheet H2. And it already has everything else that I need, so I'm just going to click OK. And then I'm going to select this paragraph text right here. and I'm going to create another style sheet with it selected. And when I open up this style sheet, I can see that it also has the basic formatting I've given it. So the typeface, it has the size, it has the leading. So all of this is being pulled in as well. And in this case, this is the smallest amount of text. So I'm going to name it P for paragraph. Now you might ask yourself why I didn't call this shape name. And the reason is, remember, this is going to be part of a series. And so if I name this style sheet shape name, then when I try to use those same style sheets, which is possible for my color poster, that's not going to make sense anymore. So it makes more sense to describe the anatomy of the text on the page rather than any of the, specifics of what it's formatting. You want to describe what it's doing and what its purpose is instead. And so in this case, H2 makes a lot more sense. Now, while I'm at it, I'm going to get a little bit of practice here too, and I'm going to go ahead and create style sheets for my H1 and for this introductory text underneath here so that I can apply it to my other posters in the series as well. Even though I only need these once on this page, I can use them on more than one page if I go ahead and create them. So what I'm going to do now is deselect my text. By the way, that's something that I'm doing a lot and that I'm not thinking about as I'm doing it because it's so second nature. But when you see me select text, a lot of times before I move on to something else, I click over here in the paste board to deselect text. You do want to do that as much as possible. So make sure that you start adding that to your workflow as well. But I don't think I have made a point to specify that's what I'm doing yet. So that's one step that I've been skipping in the instructions as we go. I'm always deselecting text. Now I'm going to take my type tool. I'm going to triple click to select my H1, and I'm going to create a new paragraph style. I'm going to open it up, and I'm just going to name it H1 because it already has everything else that I put in it because I've selected that text when I create the style sheet. If I was creating the style sheet from scratch with no text selected, it would be blank and I would need to put all that information into the style sheet. The last thing I'm going to do is select this introductory paragraph here. I'm going to create one more style sheet. And in this case, I've already got H1s and H2s, and I've already got P for paragraph, so I don't want to name this P. So I'm going to name this block quote. It's not really a quote, but it's acting as sort of what a block quote would do if this was a magazine. It's basically a call-out paragraph, right, or a summary paragraph. So I'm going to call this block quote. It also already has all of the information that I've put in there, including that the text is centered. And now I have style sheets that I can work with for the rest of my text. So at this point, it might not be quite clear why I did that and what the benefit is, but as we get more of these in here, you'll understand. So let's go ahead and let's create another text box. Remember, I recommend that these be a consistent size. So I'm going to create it, but then I'm going to move to my properties panel. And at the very top, I'm going to make sure that I'm not constraining proportions, but that I make this 2.5 inches wide by 3 inches tall. And it's distorting this lorem ipsum text, but I think when I paste in my new text, it won't do that. So let me come over here and find my next shape and its description. This time it's rectangles and squares. So I'm just going to shift select each of those and cut them to my pasteboard so that I know they're already taken care of. And then I can select all of this text by either triple clicking or putting my cursor in here and doing a Command A to select all. And then when I paste my text in, it looks like it's right, but it never hurts to check. So I'm going to come back to my character panel and just make sure that my scale is 100% both horizontally and vertically, and it is. And so here's where we can start to see the benefit of this style sheet. Now, if I just select all of this text, instead of having to go back and program all that information in again, I can just apply the same style sheet, and you can see that it automatically takes on all those properties. Same thing with this paragraph. As long as I apply the right style sheet, it's also going to take in all of those properties. So what I want you to do is I am going to stop the video and I'm going to go ahead and get my text boxes on the page for all the rest of my shapes. And I want you to go back and make sure that you create these along, on your own as practice. Just make sure that the text boxes are all the same size and that they all have consistent paragraph styles applied to them.